Money, power, and influence are the three most sought-after things in this world. While you might be living paycheck to paycheck, this family has already won the economic game, leaving you in the dust.
How did I make it big? I know how to play the game.
But how does a man who comes from nothing reach such global heights? More specifically, how does a lowly German coin trader create a multi-generational banking dynasty, such that just 50 years later, 5 of the largest European governments were completely owned by this one family? This is the story of how the Rothschilds took over the world's money supply. A quick Google search will tell you that Bernard Arnault is the richest man in the world, a French luxury businessman nicknamed the Terminator, with an estimated net worth of $179 billion. In fact, every year, Forbes lists the richest people across the globe. However, many of the wealthiest people in the world live a life behind the scenes, maneuvering chess pieces in silence.
But the Medici family and the Rothschild family has kept the wealth and the power for many, many years. You know what rule those guys follow? One basic rule: don't be loud. You don't see a Rothschild getting on TV, giving their opinions, running a podcast. The Medici and the Rothschild is playing a different game.
Right.
They're indirectly part of the establishment.
Of course.
Because they have
They are the elite.
This banking dynasty started in 18th century Germany with a man by the name of Mayer Amschel Rothschild. This relatively broke coin trader would go on to be labeled one of the 20 most influential businessmen of all time, and a founding father of international finance. From rags to riches, he worked his way up from being a coin trader to working for Jacob Oppenheimer. This was a pivotal moment for him, as he gained specific knowledge in both foreign trade and currency exchange. Rothschild was now connected to the most powerful people in Europe, trading coins and currencies with kings and princes all across the land. He later even handled the finances of Prince William of Hesse, the richest man in Europe at that time. But this didn't satisfy him. He wanted more money, more influence, and more power. That's when he had a brilliant idea. An idea so ingenious, it would permanently shift the power dynamic of the entire world to this day. Give me a nation's money supply, and I care not who makes his laws. A chilling quote famously uttered by the very man of this story. And he was not wrong. But how could he turn the tables so much in his favor? And how did he get entire governments under his thumb? The answer of which is a relatively simple concept: debt. Back then, when somebody took out a loan, it was just a case that they would simply pay it back over time. Charging interest, on the other hand, was prohibited by the Christian Bible, and thus was not practiced in wider society. But the Rothschilds were not Christians, thus having no such religious restriction. This provided the perfect opportunity for him to make his move. The play was simple: approach kings and queens and offer them loans, often in times of war where they're in need of money. Then make them pay back the loan, with compounding interest, of course. Compound interest is the most important force in the universe. He who understands it uses it. He who doesn't pays it. And the Rothschilds were founding fathers of compound interest, getting their family on the better part of this equation for centuries to follow. Globalizing this practice, they have now made it impossible for a myriad of countries to fully pay back the debt that they owe, and thus debt-based banking was born. This system, which he built and his children furthered, is the foundation of the system that is in place today. A system where there is always more debt in the world than there is money. Governments are now forced to negotiate terms with debt collectors. For example, when the Royal Crown needs money, they have to go borrow from the Rothschilds. But such a system wasn't widespread overnight. For Rothschild, it wasn't enough to control just Germany's monetary system. Rothschild needed a way to further his system through all of Europe, and even the rest of the world. If my sons did not want war, there would be none. Mayer Amschel Rothschild knew he couldn't create a dynasty on his own, nor did he want to. The idea of setting his family, and more importantly his children, up for success was of the utmost importance to him. This rings true with one of the family's most sacred quotes: "Like arrows in the hand of a warrior, so are the children of one's youth." And that was the plan. to send his sons out to further his mission, shooting them out like arrows all across Europe. Nathan went to London, Amschel went to Frankfurt, Salomon went to Vienna, Kalman went to Naples, and James went to Paris, all with one mission in mind: to finish what their father started. They then offered their banking services to that of aristocratic and royal descent, getting close to the kings, queens, and princes of the time. They slowly executed their plan, gaining more power and more control over time. They stuck their hands into many different industries along the way, including the railroad networks, mail services, and even the building of the Suez Canal. But their largest sums of money came whenever a country was in dire need of capital, whether that be in wartime, famine, or economic collapse. The Rothschilds were first on the scene to lend them whatever money they need and charge interest in return, engulfing entire governments in debt. But why just fund your side of the war when there is money to be made on both sides? For green doesn't care about blue or red. It didn't take long for them to arrive at this idea. That way, whoever won the war, the Rothschilds would be in control of that nation's money supply, and whoever lost the war would have their entire economy and society in shambles. Sounds like a great time to take out a loan. This move was so profitable, it became a staple in the family for centuries to come. To some countries, they are simply known as the war funders.
No, it's completely untrue. I was asked that earlier.
But the family didn't just make money through war and loans. They also made a lot of money speculating on large government bonds, not to mention their avid interest in oil and even precious metals, such as mercury, silver, gold, and even blood diamonds. Their funding spread far and wide since, reaching in too many industries to count. Although this story sounds fictional, Amschel was a very real human, someone who experienced both success and failure, triumph and grief, darkness and light. In spite of his heroic rise from the depths and exorbitant amassing of wealth, it was the darkness that ended up doing him in. While mourning the death of his mother, no sum of money was enough for him to escape the dark thoughts of his mind. On September 19, 1812, Mayor Amschel Rothschild's story ended in a suicide. This barely scratches the surface of the Rothschild history. Next, we will dive into how the family cornered the global market of precious metals. We'll cover everything from their surreal, extravagant parties to how they gained and maintained control of the US monetary system, and even touch on Antarctica's Rothschild Island.